This week, Michael Ehrlich from IronNet is with us to discuss attack intelligence and collective defense. Then we have two guests from Knock Knock Labs, Jackie Komp and Rolf Linderman. They're coming on to talk about giving passwords the boot. Some great passwordless use cases and best practices from them. Finally, in the enterprise security news, the latest cybersecurity fundraising news, we discuss the impact of the market downturn on the cybersecurity startup industry, crypto muggings, security researchers researching researchers simulating attackers, evil encryption, all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Deepwatch helps secure the digital economy by protecting and defending enterprise networks everywhere, every day. Deepwatch leverages its highly automated cloud-based SOC platform backed by a world-class team of experts who monitor, detect, and respond to threats on customers' digital assets 24/7, 365. Many of the world's leading brands rely on Deepwatch's managed detection and response. Visit securityweekly.com/Deepwatch to learn more.
Imagine this scenario. You're out of the office unexpectedly, and a colleague pings you because they need access to some system you have credentials for. Now, my listeners would never send passwords over email or Slack. But what about your coworkers? How many organizations out there are sending logins back and forth in plain text? Worse yet, how many just store all of their logins on a shared spreadsheet? Keeper Security's password management platform locks down logins, payment cards, and more in a patented zero-knowledge encrypted vault. Sign up for a Keeper free trial today. Visit securityweekly.com/Keeper.
Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy Devil's Food Cake Day. This is episode 274, recorded on Thursday, May 19th, just checking, 2022. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria. Joining me is the master of mobile, the professor of privileged activity, Mr. Lee Neely. How are you, Lee?
Oh, very good. Awesome introduction. Looking wonderful day today. And we've got some great guests to talk to today. I'm looking forward to it.
Very windy there, I hear.
Yes, it is, and I just made sure it's not too much for the flags. Otherwise, we'll be buying new ones as they get shredded in the breeze.
Also joining us is the herald of hacking, the captain of crypto, Mr. Tyler Robinson. How are you, Tyler?
Fantastic, Adrian. Good to see you, buddy. Long time no see.
How do you guys feel about Devil's Food Cake?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, it's wonderful stuff.
There's
now
a whole
I'm drooling
day
into
for
the
it.
mic.
I guess that's why they made a day for it. They get tired of people not knowing what it was, and we still don't know what it is, and can move right on. It's I actually don't know. I'm pretty sure I've had it, but I don't know either. I didn't think it was important enough to do that research.
It's even better.
It just cracks me up that somebody declares it's Devil's Food Cake Day. Likely somebody that's selling it, some company that's selling it. Quick announcement here. Don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings. We've had some good ones recently. You can find those at securityweekly.com/on-demand. And for our first interview today, we're going to talk about attack intelligence, collective defense, and trends to watch with Michael Ehrlich, who is the Chief Technology Officer over at IronNet. Michael has over 20 years of experience in offensive and defensive cybersecurity operations, also spent 10 years at the NSA in engineering operations and leadership positions. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks, Adrian. Thank you. I'm a little disappointed because everybody else has some cool titles. So maybe,
you got to be a co-host.
I could be like the boss of bald or something like that. Because just something,
We'll work on that. It's a little bit easier with the co-host because, I know what I can get away with. I've got some sense of, how far I can take the teasing.
All good, man. All good.
All right. So Very much looking forward to this chat here. I think probably the best place to start is just kind of decoding some of the topic that we're going to be talking about today, because you're introducing some terms here. And it's kind of funny. I was actually asking on Twitter yesterday how people distinguish from intelligence that comes from the outside of your organization with the intelligence that comes from the inside of the organization. And it's so tough to come up with terms that refer specifically to the type of intelligence that you're talking about. So let's start there with attack intelligence. What do you mean when you say attack intelligence?
Yeah, Adrian. So, first of all, it's an interesting question that you asked, right? The outside versus the inside. I hope that people that responded said that they actually do have intelligence in their organization of some form or another. Whether that's cyber intelligence, I don't know, but hopefully there's organizations out there that go about what they do in a smart and intelligent fashion. What I talk about when I talk about attack intelligence, I'm a big user of Waze or Google Maps or whatever to get me from point A to point B. And I keep thinking back, imagine if when you opened your app to drive from my house, which is in Maryland, up to Rhode Island, let's say, I got inundated with traffic reports from everywhere in the country that weren't specific to me or the route that I'm driving. To me, that's what threat intelligence is today, right? Some feeds are better than others. Some are more relevant to you. But fundamentally, it's a bunch of news coming in that may or may not matter. And it's up to me to figure out whether it should matter to me. You use Waze. It knows where I am. It knows how fast I'm going. It knows where I'm headed to. And it delivers me intelligence like, hey, this route's going to take, 4 times longer than normal, or there's an accident on the road up ahead. And so to me, that is sort of actionable and timely and relevant intelligence for me as a driver. And when I talk about attack intelligence, I'm talking about the same thing for a cybersecurity defender, right? Intelligence that is not just this giant pile of, hey, here's all the stuff in the world happening, but, hey, here's a little bit of information that is happening to you right now. Here's what to do about it. So that's what I call attack intelligence. It's a subset of threat intel. It's the good part. It's the tasty part.
Is that able to be curated now with the current technologies that are available? Is that leveraging something like attack surface management, where you understand and know your attack surface, your monitoring is curated and truncated on the entry or the ingress? Or is that something that you curate as it's coming in and you have the option to filter? Like, can we do that now?
Yeah, so there's a yes answer in there somewhere. The way we are doing it when we're actually talking about curated intelligence is, yes, we curate it. Curated intelligence is great. It's just not necessarily quick, right? And so, the platform that we've built that does this does rely on, I'm not a big fan of the word, but I'll use it, crowdsourcing of intelligence. But it's more than just crowdsourcing of intelligence, because whenever a human is involved in the loop, things are going to slow down. And so what we really try to do is we really try to be a little closer to Waze. And I hope somebody out there from Waze is listening to me, because I've been trying to get in touch with you for like 2 months, just saying. But Waze doesn't rely on some analyst back at Waze headquarters to tell me that, should I alert them that there's a deer in the middle lane 3 miles ahead of them? All that is done automatically. And so, yeah, of course, there's an element. If people always report something that's not really there, eventually it's going to spoil the data set. But by and large, when you have a community of smart users that are really in it to to help each other, to collaborate, to work together. Most of the information, I would say, 99.9999% of the intelligence we get is really good. It's really clean, and for the customers it goes out to, it's actionable. So yes, Tyler. I mean, curating is great. It can be done by people. Can also be done by a bunch of people reporting the same thing, and your machine assesses, well, it must be true. So
is there a provision, much like in Waze, when it gives you a false positive on something that isn't there anymore, and you can mark it's not there? Is it an equivalent in the in this model where I could say, well, no, that's not applicable, to help tune the model or take out some noise to increase the fidelity?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those features that when we started doing what we do, we didn't know was going to be important. But we realized shortly after this thing went into production that different analysts at different organizations will rate things differently. Some will say something's benign, another will say it's malicious. A lot of reasons for that, right? It might just be a risk tolerance. It might be an educational gap or an operational, something maybe critical for someone and not for another. That sort of gap. But whenever that happens, we automatically notify both parties that, hey, somebody else said what you said wasn't quite right. And then we also step in as part of that curation phase to try to figure out which it really was. Is it really benign? Is it malicious? Or is it dependent on the organization's point of view? So yes is the answer. Yes.
Yeah, so we've actually, like we've had to tackle this, not just with intelligence, but I remember in the early days, if you did like a network vulnerability scan or something like that, and you wanted it to be efficient, you go in there and you customize your scan for what you're scanning, because the scanners weren't smart enough to know the difference between a Windows system and a Unix system, and you didn't want to scan the Windows system with the Unix checks or the Unix system with the Windows checks. And eventually, like, we got there, and it got smart enough where it's not going to run Apache vulnerability checks against Nginx and things like that. So I wonder, like how much of this is stuff that you can do beforehand, where you're tuning the intelligence that you see by telling it what you care about, what you have, things like that.
Yeah. So the advantage we have, and you could say it's a disadvantage too, I'll call it an advantage, right? It's two sides to everything, is that the data we ingest into the platform, this collective defense platform that we call Iron Dome, which, by the way, is never a name where IronNet's going to get the first Google hit because of Israel's missile defense system. But Iron Dome is our collective defense platform. The data we ingest comes almost exclusively from our enterprise level cybersecurity tools. So there's a sort of a first level of curation. We already understand the data. We understand the provenance of the data, which helps us drive the correlations and helps everybody that uses the platform sort of talk on a consistent basis with a consistent, language, if you will. So we are not going out. And the future we will, but right now we're not going out and pulling in data from 14 other tools that we haven't figured out how exactly to map together and correlate together. We focus largely on the data coming out of our tools.
And maybe it's worth just zooming out to a higher level and talking briefly about what IronNet does, so we have some context for what we're talking about here.
Yeah, sure. So the sort of the quick version is actually today, believe it or not, today, May 19th, is IronNet's 8th birthday. So we're celebrating IronNet's 8th birthday today.
They're having devil food cake. Devil's food cake for the birthday cake.
Devil's food cake, exactly, on Devil's Food Cake Day. I mean, what better?
Perfect.
But yeah, it was 8 years ago that So our founder and CEO is General Keith Alexander, former director of NSA. And after he retired with 4 stars on his shoulder and years of service to this country, he decided there were some things in cybersecurity that he still wanted to tackle, that he thought he could as a private citizen, and it would even be easier than when he was Dernza, director of the NSA. And I would say we try to tackle 2 of those frustrations he had, and one was that, and you all know, anybody listening to this knows this ain't news, is that it takes us as defenders simply too long to identify new malicious behavior, right? We've been talking about threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is great. My definition is that someone else was hacked or breached some unknown time ago. Someone at that organization triaged it. They determined it to be malicious. It probably went through like a law release review, a legal release review, and then eventually that organization put it out as threat intel, which we break down into really, a file hash, a domain name, something we can filter on, right? An IP address. And that's sort of what we share, maybe sometimes with context, maybe without. But to get to that point of sharing, you guys know this, right? From the time of initial breach, we're often talking months, if not years, and on occasion even longer than years. And so we as a community are really poor at identifying bad quickly. And so one of the things General Alexander wanted his company to do was to build a tool that could help identify bad more quickly. And so the tool that we have, it's a NDR platform, network detection and response, network traffic analysis. Pick your favorite 3 letters that have network in there somewhere. And so that is the tool that feeds our Iron Dome platform. So fundamentally, IronNet does 2 things. We do network detection and response, and then we take an aggregate anonymized data set from those customers, push it up to a cloud-based platform like Waze, but we call it Iron Dome, and analyze all of that data in aggregate, just like Waze does, so that we can push timely, actionable, relevant insights back to the participants, back to the users. So those are the 2 things we do. And I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example to help solidify that a little bit. So this is a little dated example, but I think it's still a good one. Back in December of 2020, I don't know what the exact date was, maybe like December 14th, 15th, 12th, I don't know. December 2020, FireEye came out with this warning, right? And the title was SolarWinds. We think essentially something bad's going on. And that's great. And we all know the fallout, the ramifications of Sunburst, and then all the follow-on activity, both in private sector and government. And that is what we would call traditional threat intelligence. If we were to back up like 7 months, let's back up to May of 2020, before there was even the word Sunburst. SolarWinds was obviously out there, but not meant to mean an attack vector, right? So we are fortunate to count some of the very largest electric utilities as our customers, and they were actually our beta customers for this collective defense platform we call Iron Dome. And so, but back in early 2020, we had about 7 of the 10 largest electric utilities as customers. And in May of 2020, we identified the first DNS tunneling activity through our NDR platform to this domain, avsvmcloud.com, right? The domain had been around for a long time, wasn't particularly suspicious, other than the fact that there was DNS tunneling that was going to it. And so one of our customers would have gotten that alert. Hey, hey, Adrian, hey, Lee, you've got DNS tunneling out to this thing. It looks like it's encoded this way, blah, 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 blah. And that's great. Right. Over the course of the next 4 weeks, so between the end of May and the end of June, we identified and correlated that same behavior across 4 other of our large energy customers. And so, you as a defender, not only would you have known that you have this behavior in your network, but you would have known that it's been spreading to, 1, 2, 3, 4 other similar organizations. So maybe the same industrial sector or within your supply chain or geographically, right? And that even though you would know that even though no human had actually laid eyes on it. So one of the things we're trying to do is identify campaigns, right? SolarWinds is certainly a campaign. Identify campaigns just by the sort of the raw detection data, even without humans looking into it. So by the end of June, 5 of our customers were experiencing the same thing. They knew about it. While they didn't know who else was experiencing it, they knew that 4 other companies in their sector were. It doesn't make it malicious, right, guys? It doesn't make it malicious. But it gives you a little more insight. It lets you see, out from your car in the ways. It lets me see what's happening in the world around me a little better than you could do without that. And so that's the sort of visibility we're trying to bring, the sort of, attack intelligence, things like that.
So it sounds like you get a lot of visibility into what's going on at your various customers' locations. Do you have any trouble with them worrying about disclosure? I know you say you're anonymizing the data you share. Are they worried about you knowing too much about what's going on in their knickers? Or do we have non-disclosures? Or I would think people would be a little worried about somebody else knowing their weak spots.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So I'll tell you, when we first started building the platform, I don't remember how long it took, but let's just say it took 6 months to build our collective defense platform. It was longer than that, but it took, relatively speaking, 2 years to get our first beta customers for Iron Dome, to get their legal departments comfortable with what we were doing, right? So, we had to show them the data we were pushing up to our platform, how we anonymized it, how we minimized things like that. Once we got through that initial group and they all understood how we were operating, since that point, we've gotten better at telling the story about what we do. And maybe, I think actually not maybe, but I'm certain the world has started to believe more and more that, right, cybersecurity is not an individual sport. We got to play as a team. We got to work together. And so we rarely get any sort of pushback against that sort. We don't get that mentality much anymore. I think one of the things that help is, of course, we have NDAs and things like that with all of our customers. We also, in addition to the 2 platforms, we also do offer operational services. So it is oftentimes our folks that are operating our platform on behalf of the customer in their space. So I think that helps. We form a pretty tight team with them.
That sounds almost too good to be true. Like how can we actually leverage this further? This seems like a great use case for collective collaboration in crisis situations, such as such as SolarGate, SolarWinds, the Ukrainian war right now. Like, I spend an enormous amount of time playing and collaborating and passing intelligence. Like, this seems like a great platform to be able to provide that level of service and to offer that to much broader stance than just, your customers. So how do we get more people on board and utilize this further? Like, I haven't heard of anybody anonymizing this and actually doing something good with that data.
Yeah, Tyler, dude, I wish I knew. I think there's a couple things to think about, right? We started by using data from our own tool. I think it would be great, and I don't want to talk about roadmap or anything, but it would be great if I could take the output of any tool, right? Figure out how to map its features and correlate against any other tools. and provide those sorts of insights, not just based on NDR, but EDR or firewall or web proxy, things like that as well, right? But when we first started this, we wanted to focus on what we knew how to do and what we knew how to do well. And so I think that will be a natural extension of the project. It's been interesting getting, one of the bits of data that we understand in our platform is what organizations are literally right now triaging what stuff in their network. And so because we know that, we can also drive collaboration, right? I can say sort of anonymously, hey, Tyler, there's another guy over in Boise, Idaho, and I wouldn't say Boise, Idaho, but over in your sector that is triaging this almost exactly the same behavior. You want me to start up this anonymized chat channel? Now, it's anonymized to the point where, you don't know who the other participant is. Of course, if they type in their name, right, then it's not anonymous anymore. But we can facilitate that sort of collaboration, and we do. I'll tell you that the thing I think is the neatest part about it all is we can visualize for the analysts. Imagine a screen full of dots where a particular color dot means that a blue dot means that this is something that's active in your network, and there's lines radiating from that blue dot to 10 other organizations, all anonymous. And so that thing that's affecting you is affecting 10 other organizations as well. We're starting to see SOC analysts choose what they will triage next, partly informed by how many organizations their effort may help, right? So, I could say, Lee, you could triage this thing that looks like it's credential phishing, and I can tell you that it's only your organization that sees that right now. Or you could triage this DNS tunneling thing that down the road became SolarWinds. The output of your work then would affect your organization because you're experiencing it, but maybe 4 others in your sector or in your supply chain. And so we're starting to see how this, concept of crowdsourced SOC, right, based on commonality of experience, is starting to drive operations. So I think that's
this is working groups, right? Like in USG or as part of operations, these are working groups. This is a much better way to do that. But I think that's great, man. This is brilliant.
Yeah, and I do. Here we go. I'm wearing the IronNet T-shirt, right? And I think what we've built is a great start. I think you were right. I don't think there's anyone else doing it as, I like the word intimate. I mean, you look at what we provide and exactly where you sit with respect to other organizations. You see how what is affecting you is affecting others. You see that overlap. You can collaborate, but it's not nearly done. I mean, we're not perfect at what we do. There's room for improvement everywhere. But I think it sets the foundation for again, back to General Alexander, for what he always wanted to do. And that is provide this sort of national level visibility picture. He would call it the cyber radar picture. Every air traffic controller can see what's coming into the U.S. where they can focus on their part. And so this is the beginning of sort of the cyber radar picture, I think.
Yeah, it's great. And I think this is very much something that needs to be normalized. Yeah, I do a lot of research on breach postmortems on how they happen. And it's very rare to get the level of detail that you need to do those kinds of postmortems. And it seems like every other industry where safety is a concern, whether it be, maritime incidents, even OSHA, stuff like that, typically that data is public so we can learn from it, so we can not make those same mistakes again. So I'd love to see this kind of extend to, incident sharing as well, postmortem sharing, because nobody needs to know whose failure it was to learn from it. Like we don't need to know exactly who the company is. Like it's just as useful anonymized, I think, as it,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The name doesn't really add anything to it.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff. The other thing I point out that I think is interesting also is generally when I talk about, customers that are using this, it's large organizations that have a really, really mature SOC and can contribute to this, crowdsourced triage, if you will. But you don't need that, right? Even if your IT department is the same as your company president and your company cybersecurity guy, right? If you are instrumented, the data you have, the things we can detect on your network can help drive discovery for others, right? Just like, as long as you have Waze running in your car, you don't have to look at it. You don't have to, click when you pass a police officer. You don't have to interact with it at all if you don't want to, right? But the data you provide still makes it a greater good for everyone else. And so, so while you may not contribute as an actual triage person or an attack intel person, the data your organization provides can absolutely help us frame when we see campaigns and help your other partner organizations, right, your community, understand how prevalent a particular thing is. So, yeah.
Excellent stuff, Michael. Thank you very much for sharing your lesson on sharing with us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Anything you have going on? Any talks at RSA or anything like that you want to share before we wrap up here?
So I wish I knew. I know we have a contingent going out to RSA. I'm not among those. I would say my life is busy that I focus on what I do. So honestly, I don't know. I'm sure you can hop over to IronNet.com if you want to learn more about collective defense, attack intelligence, NDR. So that's what I got for you.
All right, good stuff. Appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Thank you.
All right, stay tuned. When we come back, Jackie and Rolf from Knock Knock Labs are going to help us delete all our passwords.